From the outside, Eric and Kouri Richins seem to be living the perfect little life. The attractive young couple had 3 young boys and were doing very well financially, living just outside of the very affluent Park City in Utah. They traveled, had a beautiful home, and spent a lot of family time with their boys. But beneath the exterior, something else was happening. Family members say Eric suspected his wife of trying to poison him, giving him food and drinks laced with poison. Eric got so suspicious that he changed his life insurance and will to leave his money to his sister. Eric then died of fentanyl poisoning in March of 2022. At first, Kouri played the role of grieving widow of a man who OD'd on drugs. But investigators continued looking at the case, and they have now charged Kouri with his murder. Tonight, we take a closer look at the death of Eric Richins and the actions of the accused killer wife, Kouri. We'll take a look at what we know about the case and what we still don't know.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And this story we're talking about this hour really blasted onto the headlines because of a children's book that was written by Kouri Richins. And it was a children's book about how to deal with and how to grieve as a child when you have loss. And I think that fact alone got a lot of people kind of angry once the allegations here ended up being formalized into charges against Kouri Richins, because she writes this book because she has 3 children that she had with Eric, 3 little boys that they have no father. So you're teaching people how to grieve, but the allegation is that you are the one who created this situation for which these little boys now have to deal with. And again, she's presumed innocent. She's claiming her innocence as well. But if these allegations are true, think about how utterly sick that is. To take the life of these little guys' dad and then try to turn a profit on it by writing a children's book on how to deal with grief. I mean, it's beyond sick. But she's presumed innocent and is claiming her innocence. That's why we have trials for. But there's another part of this, is that Eric had suspicions about all of this. So he's allegedly, right, again, this is all evidence and allegations, but had suspicions that his wife was trying to poison him. And we're going to talk about that in this hour, because it's not the first time we've had a case or we'll have a trial where part of the evidence is that the victim was suspicious that the killer, the person closest to them in the world, like their spouse, was trying to take their life. Or if they were found dead, make sure you look at her or you look at him. And to me, we'll take a look at that issue. But here we are, and Kouri Richins is accused of murder, is accused of taking his life. So it's as serious as it gets, number one, but it just seems that there was a little bit of writing on the wall, or this is just like totally out of left field, and you've got someone who has lost her husband and has been wrongfully accused and has been held, you know, in front of the public as, you know, this cold-hearted mother and woman. Who exactly is she? What is the evidence in this case? Let's go through it. Joining me in studio tonight, Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, who has a mission tonight, which is to go through all of this and figure out exactly what evidence there is. Because when you think about what these allegations are, cold, really cold is what we're talking about here. So what do we know about the day that Eric died?
Well, we know from Kouri Richins' own words what she says happens, Vinny, and it's March 3rd, 2022. She just closed on a multi-million-dollar home. She's a real estate agent and a broker. She was allegedly celebrating with her husband that night that she had closed on this home, and she says she makes him a Moscow Mule. And he drank it in the bed, took a couple of sips, And then she goes to sleep in one of the children's rooms because one is having a nightmare. She says she wakes up around 3 a.m., goes back to her bedroom, and then finds Eric cold to the touch. She also says she leaves her cell phone in her master bedroom. Prosecutors say there's some activity on that phone, though, so it's a little bit inconsistent. She also wrote a statement after police arrived. They start investigating what could have happened. And in her own writing, she says pretty much the same thing. She says she does say goodnight, I love you, before she goes off and sleeps with one of the kids. Woke up around 3 a.m. to go back to bed. She says, I got in our bed and went to hug/cuddle Eric, and he was freezing. And she goes on to write how she says, Eric, he doesn't respond. And she calls 911. She tries to perform CPR, even pulling him off the bed as the 911 dispatcher instructed her to do. But we also know, based on the testimony from the detention hearing, that the experts say there was really no CPR conducted based on the first responders, what they would expect to see if someone had performed that. So some inconsistencies in what she says according to prosecutors, but again, these are her own words, what she says happened, because she's the only other adult in the home, Vinny.
Right, so what we're expecting as part of the case will be picking apart her statement, her version of what happened that night.
Exactly.
Okay, now, the allegation is that she poisoned him with fentanyl. So what evidence do prosecutors say they have, and how do they say that she got these drugs? Because I don't know, if I had to go buy fentanyl somewhere, I'm not sure if I know exactly how to do it right away.
Right.
But you got to figure it out.
I have no idea. So apparently she had some acquaintances that she knew to use illicit drugs. And immediately at the scene, we have the body cam transcript. She's telling those first responders, he doesn't do drugs, never does drugs. But as they started this investigation, because there's no drugs found in the home, Vinny, they're trying to figure out what did he die from. He's young, he's 39 years old. They start...
But she's offering that...
Immediately.
He does not take drugs.
Right.
Okay.
And so they confiscate, upon a search warrant, her cell phone, other items in the home, and on her cell phone during key time frames, a name consistently pops up, someone that would clean houses for Kouri, her real estate houses as well as her personal house. So they're able to follow up with who they refer to as CL, and they find out this. Let's watch.
In our interviews, CL told us that in early 2022, the defendant reached out to her either by phone call or text message requesting that she procure fentanyl for what the defendant reported was an investor who had a back injury. CL told us that she contacted acquaintance 2 after receiving his phone number and asked to arrange to meet to purchase some fentanyl from him. She stated that sometime in February, she believed she met up with acquaintance 2 at a Maverick gas station in Draper and purchased from him 15 to 30 round green-blue pills, which she understood to be fentanyl.
What, if anything, did CL say about what she did with the fentanyl pills that she purchased from acquaintance 2?
CL told us that after purchasing the pills from acquaintance 2, she returned home to her house in Heber. She said that either later that night or the next day, the defendant met her in the driveway of that home and did a hand-to-hand exchange of pills for cash. CL told us that approximately a week after delivering the first load of fentanyl, the defendant reached out to her again by text or call and said that she wanted some more fentanyl that was stronger than the previous batch. CL told us that the second time that she procured fentanyl for the defendant, she did not have a vehicle to drive on that date. She said that she reached out to a friend, acquaintance 3, and asked that he give her a ride to go purchase fentanyl. She said that he did pick her up, that they traveled from Heber City to the defendant's home in Francis, where, according to CL, the defendant had told her there was a check waiting under the mat at the defendant's home. She said that she checked under the mat and didn't find a check, and so she knocked on the defendant's door, and the defendant came to the door and wrote her a check from her business, from the defendant's business, for $1,300 for the purchase of the fentanyl.
You can see her reaction there, Vinny. Her defense stood up and said that check was for house cleaning, the cleaning of her real estate homes that she owned at the time. And they really, in court documents, tried to attack the credibility, the reliability of CL, who had a checkered past. I mean, she has some drug offenses. She would have faced.
Right, but who's she connected to? Who's she communicating with? The defendant, right? That's always the comeback. And by the way, we're going to bring in a body language expert in a little while to take a look at this defendant. Some of those reactions, because she doesn't just sit there and do nothing. She's always reacting in some way to everything. So, okay, so her purchasing drugs, big part of the prosecution case, right? To go to cause of death, where the fentanyl came from. It came from her, of course. So she laced, the allegation, she laced his drink, his food. Another big part of the prosecution case is why, the motive in this case. And it's all financial, it seems. It's not like it's another guy. It's about money, money, money.
Money, money, money. Apparently, she was in debt up to her eyeballs at the time that her husband, Eric, passed away. Good timing for her, is what prosecutors say. She'd been transferring from their joint bank accounts to her business bank account. Among and in between the accounts, it started really in the couple of months leading up to his death. And prosecutors say that was the motive. The only way she could have benefited financially from her husband is if he was dead. She also had multiple life insurance policies out on him. Allegedly, he did not know about Vinny. But we learned more from the probable cause affidavit. This is some of it. Prosecutors have more than this, Vinny. But in September 2020, they say Eric Richins discovered the defendant obtained and spent $250,000 in a home equity line of credit. Defendant withdrew $100,000 from Eric's bank accounts. She also spent in excess of $30,000 on his credit cards. In October 2020, Eric Richins even changed his will and placed his estate under the control of his sister, telling the estate attorney at the time that his wife was reckless with finances and he wanted to protect himself and his sons. And then also designated his business partner as the beneficiary on his work life insurance policy. She tried to actually change that January 1st. That's an allegation. And we, of course, heard more testimony in that extensive detention hearing, Vinny. They actually called a forensic accountant because it's even worse than what I just said. Let's watch.
Besides the life insurance policy that was on Eric's business, what was the amount of money that Eric's life was insured for at the time of his death?
About $1.2 million, aside from the business buy-sell policy.
And are you familiar with any attempt to change the beneficiary of the business policy?
I'm aware that that is the report, yes.
And what was the report?
That on New Year's Day of 2022, that in New York Life's online portal, someone had logged in and had changed the beneficiaries on that policy
To
Kouri Richins.
Okay. And that was changed back, as far as you know, had been changed back at the time of Eric's death?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Do you know how much money the defendant got in insurance payouts?
$1.3 million, a little bit more than that, $1.3 million in June of 2022.
She received $1.3 million in June since her husband's death. Now, the defense says he knew about all of these life insurance policies. He had to go cooperate, sign, go to the medical exams, and yet the state contends that there's possibly more charges coming her way because of the fraud and financial crimes.
So in the use of the money, this is a little different than the Daybell situation, right? In Daybell, it was all about Lori wanted to be with someone else, and they would use the money, and they'd go to Hawaii, and that. She's using this money to prop up her failed business, right? Yeah. She thinks she's an HGTV star who can just flip homes and make money. Woo, look at me, I'm a business lady.
Yeah, I've been to the home. It's a gorgeous mansion. It's right in mountain view wherever you look there in Utah. It's gorgeous, but she couldn't afford it, Vinny.
Right. So she's trying to prop up her business. He has a successful, solid business that he had before they even got married.
Yes.
And their financial relationship was it wasn't like what's mine is yours, what yours is mine. There was like some stuff that was both of theirs, but then they had like their separate businesses and their accounts.
A prenup.
And a prenup. And hers was tanking. He was doing great, so she's trying to get that money. He probably wasn't cooperating anymore with like propping up her business, saying, all right, you're done.
Right.
You're done with your little thing. Try something else. Okay. What do we think the defense is going to be here?
So that's an interesting question. Based on court documents, based on what we heard in the detention hearing, it seems as though she's going to blame her husband for his own death. In court documents, she contends that he was a partier. Vinny, he hid that part of his life from his family, from his sisters, people who thought that that would be unusual for him to have illicit drugs in the home. In court documents, the defense says that he would party in different countries, on different hunting trips that he would go on. He even was addicted, according to Kouri, to painkillers growing up. He would, she sent a message to his father after his death saying that Eric would steal painkillers from his mom and use them growing up. So she's trying to point the finger at him, that he was someone that possibly overdosed on his own. There's also, according to the defense, not one single text message or other document turned over in discovery that would support Eric ever believing Kouri would attempt to poison him or told anyone that she would. That was from a recent court document. Also, we learned from court documents that Kouri actually admitted to trying to buy those painkillers for Eric in a jailhouse phone call. So after her arrest, on the night of her arrest actually, she spoke to her mother and her brother from jail and admitted that she contacted CL and asked for pain pills. The defendant said that she requested the pain pills on Eric Richins' behalf. And the prosecution, this is a prosecution document, so they're saying this actually corroborates CL, saying that it set aside that this explanation is inconsistent with her prior statements that he didn't use pills, there was no drugs, he didn't use drugs, but it corroborates CL's testimony that she was approached by Kouri for illicit drugs. So we didn't get to hear this jailhouse call at the detention hearing because the defense said they didn't receive it in discovery. They won that motion, but it is interesting that that could be the direction that she's going.
Yeah, he's a druggie, OD. Okay, and obviously, you know, people do struggle with addiction. I wonder if there's any other evidence of that anywhere. It'd be interesting to see.
Right.
All right, and what was their relationship status?
Yeah, that's another thing that Kouri's defense wants to point to. Leading up to his death, they were going on dates with other couples, going out to dinner. In a defense document, they point to the fact that on Valentine's Day, that this is what the prosecution says was an attempt to poison him on Valentine's Day, but the defense says no. She actually specially went to purchase lunch for him and took it to him at his work. And then he wasn't feeling well after the lunch. Well, prosecutors say because she tried to dose him with fentanyl. But then the defense says at 3:48, Eric and Kouri corresponded over text. Kouri was designated Vinny as my princess in Eric's phone and asked Eric how he was feeling. And he responded, okay, wish you were here. And then a couple of days later, Eric initiates plans with a couple. They go to dinner. And then the next night, they go to dinner again with another couple. They met different friends at a bar for drinks. And then witness accounts state that they had never seen Eric and Kouri happier. And that's only a few days before the alleged murder.
Okay, it's going to be contested. There's not going to be a deal here. This
he
is
has
going.
an answer for everything. This
is going to trial. All right, we shall see. Thank you, Chanley, going through all of that. Appreciate it. When we come back, as I said, we're going to bring in a body language expert, take a look at the defendant, plus coming up next hour.
In Claremont County, Ohio, an unthinkable triple homicide. A father of 3 young boys accused of executing all 3 with a rifle at their home. Tonight, we'll hear the 911 calls, see the body cam footage, and ask the question, is there any reason he should not face the death penalty if convicted?
The female that went to the firehouse is advising them that the male shot the entire family.
Over $27,000 worth of stolen reptiles.
And a teenager fatally shot.
William Zelensky, owner of Wild Bill's Exotic, stands accused of killing his girlfriend's son.
The alleged motive, snakes and a crocodile stolen from the defendant.
We're taking you inside the courtroom as this shocking case unfolds.
The Stolen Reptile Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
All she said actually is just, be ready. It's going to be a messy divorce. She said, if something happens to me, it's going to be Larry.
That was Mary Chris Juliet. She's the sister of Maya Millete. Maya Millete is missing, has been missing. Her husband, Larry, right there, high school sweethearts at one point. Her husband, Larry's been charged with her murder. And what Maya told her sister, Mary Chris, you heard it. If anything happens to me, it was Larry. She was starting to seek a divorce, but they were still together in the house. Still together in the house, but she knew if something happened, it was Larry. That's what she said. You may recall this couple, Julie and Mark Jensen. It was a case that we covered here on Court TV, actually twice, many years apart. He was accused and convicted twice of murdering his wife, Julie, with antifreeze. There was a letter that Julie wrote. Take a look at it. In that letter, if anything happens to me, he would be my first suspect, speaking about her husband, Mark. So again, someone who knew. Now, in this case, in Utah, Kouri Richins, accused of murdering her husband, Eric. 3 days later, this is from the probable cause affidavit. 3 days later, on February 14th, 2022, the defendant prepared a sandwich for Eric Richins and placed it on the seat of his truck with a love note. Shortly after consuming the sandwich, Eric Richins broke out in hives and had difficulty breathing. Eric found his son's EpiPen and administered it to himself and slept. Eric Richins believed that he had been poisoned. Eric Richins told a friend that he thought his wife was trying to poison him. So I have a question tonight, because this is not the first time, and there are other examples that we've seen through the years here on Court TV. Why do they stay? Why do they stay? If you're with someone and you're like, hey, if something happens to me, they look at them, or I think they may be trying to kill me, why do they stay? What's the psychology of all that? Let's bring in an expert. Joining us tonight from Los Angeles, California, forensic psychiatrist, trial expert witness, columnist of Inside the Criminal Mind, and best-selling author, Dr. Carol Lieberman is with us. Dr. Lieberman, thank you so much. So, I mean, that's really my question tonight, because we've seen this, unfortunately, many times in these spousal murder cases. They have a sense that something's going on, yet sometimes they stay. Why is that? What is the dynamic there?
Yes, their gut is telling them, especially because they've known their spouse usually for a significant amount of time, and so they sense these things. Why do they stay? For each couple, it's a little bit different, but in general, it has to do with something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive meaning thinking, dissonance meaning conflict. So on the one hand, the conscious part of their mind is aware of these kinds of things. You know, they pick up on cues, like the sandwich that, that got him sick, got Eric sick. But then they don't want to believe this. So they go into denial, and they push these conscious thoughts into their unconscious mind, and they pretend to themselves that everything's fine. Now, with Eric, there were also some particular reasons why he wanted to believe that it was fine. I mean, besides the fact that nobody wants to believe that their spouse is going to kill them. But he was really intent upon keeping the family together for his 3 boys. And his wife, his first wife, according to Kouri, had an affair. And so he didn't want to go through another divorce. And he just he was hoping that he was wrong.
So I guess deep down you want to believe that you're wrong, right? You don't want to believe that you would exchange vows and be married to someone who would be capable of taking your life. I mean, that's because it almost makes you question your own judgment, right? Of who someone is. So I guess you wouldn't want to believe it.
Right. And yet, in this case, of course, he had so many reasons why he shouldn't believe it. Why, the logical part of his mind, the conscious part, really did have good reasons why he should suspect her. I mean, the fact that there were these other previous occasions when he got sick, the fact that she had been taking money from him, the fact that he knew already that she had changed his life insurance, and yes, he changed it back, but he was already doing things with money and a trust for his kids and so on, taking action where that showed that he did believe on one level, his conscious level, he was realizing that these are clues that there's something going on. But again, the unconscious, was more took control and told him, man, no, you're just, this is your mind playing tricks on you. She wouldn't do anything like that to you. She loves you. And of course, she was such a good game player. She was so able to convince him how much she loved him and all of that, that he believed that part.
Yet, right, he's allegedly verbalizing this to someone, like saying out loud, she's trying to poison me. In the other cases, a note written, a letter written saying he's the one. In other cases, telling someone, hey, if something happens to me, look at him. So from your perspective, at a trial, how much weight should a jury put into those statements if they become evidence, right? If it's in front of the jury that, hey, the victim here said, if something happens to me, look at this person. Or, hey, my spouse is trying to poison me. How much weight do you think the jury should put in those types of statements?
I think the jury is going to connect to those kinds of statements and see them as being real because, they know themselves. We all know when we have these gut feelings about something. And I mean, if he seemed like, if he was a man who had other flights of fancy, if he wasn't really serious and wasn't really responsible, which he was, in so many different ways, his business, his children, and so on, he was very responsible. So if somebody like that has these feelings, these senses, they will take it seriously. It's sort of something that just connects to something we all can relate to.
And in evaluating these statements, is it important who the person is that is saying, hey, they told me this, right? To me, because
yes,
if for the jury to believe it and trust it,
yes,
the source is important, right?
Right. I mean, if it's somebody who would benefit, like, for example, his sister, I mean, I guess maybe the jury could question, well, is she just saying that because he put his life insurance and his trust and all of that into her name? And is she just saying it, so that the wife gets convicted? That's certainly possible that they would wonder about it in any case. But I think from what we know so far about these various people, there are some who seem more trustworthy than others.
I'm going to ask you one more question. I don't know what the answer is. Have you ever come across someone who has said, hey, I think my spouse is trying to kill me, or if I end up dead, you should look at my spouse, and they don't die?
Well, I mean, we have people, paranoid schizophrenics, for example, or other kinds of paranoid people who might have these thoughts. And it isn't true, but that has to do with a mental illness, not really not that they were wrong or not about a gut feeling. It would be somebody who is generally paranoid, typically, or for example, people who think that their spouse is cheating, like he thought that she was cheating and she thought that he was cheating. So, those kinds of things could be taken with a little more of a grain of salt. But something like this is more serious.
Absolutely. Dr. Carol Lieberman, great to have your insight tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
When we come back, we're going to take a look at the accused body language. Kouri Richins did a lot of tears today. She was in the courtroom for a scheduling conference, and she is just crying. What does it mean? We'll find out next.
On the next episode of Accomplice to Murder.
Disabled man beaten, kicked, and suffocated to death.
I was young and dumb and manipulated by a grown man.
Morgan was probably more the manipulator.
I think they called her the blue-eyed devil.
There's no way this offense would have been committed by Morgan Leopard without Toby Lowry. But Toby could have committed this offense without her.
He deserved what he got.
Accomplice to Murder with Fanny Politan. All new episode, Sunday night, 8/7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
We'll set a scheduling conference 2 for September 1 at 1:30 p.m. in person.
Thank you.
Anything else today?
I don't have anything further.
No, you're not. Thank you. All right. Ms. Richins, I'll see you back on September 1 at 1:30 p.m. in person, if not sooner. I wish you the best of luck.
I've never seen that. It's a scheduling conference, right? This is one of those hearings. There's no testimony. There's no allegations. There's no victims. It's just setting the schedule, you know, for the case. You know, when we're going to next meet to do this and that, motions, discovery, etc. And Kouri Richins crying during all of it. What's going on here? Let's bring in our special guest from Alexandria, Virginia tonight, body language expert, New York Times best-selling author of You Can't Lie to Me, Janine Driver, back with us. Janine, great to see you.
Hi, Vinny. Nice to see you.
All right. Well, what do you think first of those tears from Kouri Richins during this scheduling conference? Did it look legit to me, but what do I know?
They do. They look legit. They do look legit. And I agree with you. You know, there's a reason why we have an ear, nose, and throat doctor. They're all connected. So you'll often see some deep swallows. We didn't see that here, but we definitely have tears coming out of our eyes. When people are fake crying, you'll often not see tears. They'll just do the sound effects like, but no tears. So we see tears. The catch-22 here, Vinny, and you at home is, what is the sadness for, right? We don't know what the catalyst is for that emotion, but this is sadness here. These are legit, in my opinion.
Now, one reason I wanted to look at that is we've got from the prior hearing, and this is a situation where her sister-in-law, Eric's sister, is speaking and addressing the court, and it seems to be some emotion coming from Kouri Richins during that as well. So let's take a look and let's take a listen.
Did they catch a glimpse of their father taking his last breath? It's torture to think of. Why did Eric lose his life? Why did the boys lose their father? Was it because of Kouri's greed and desire to get life insurance and other assets? If so, that is abhorrent. How could anyone value human life so cheaply? I cannot comprehend it. I'm overflowing with grief and pain at the thought that Eric meant so little to her. If Eric had died because of an illness, he would have been cared for. He could have looked after him and been with him. If he had died because of an accident, people would have tried to help. There would have been kindness. But there's no comfort to be had here. There's no consoling thought in the way Eric died. In his last moments, after being intentionally poisoned, he was faced with betrayal and terror. The thought of it is unbearable. I am haunted by the horror of it. This last year has been a living hell for our family. We have watched as Kouri has paraded around portraying herself as a living widow and victim while trying to profit from the death of my brother. Both by trying to profit from a book about his death and trying to get life insurance and assets that should go exactly where Eric wanted them to his boys.
All right. What did you see?
All right. Well, lots of stress happening here, and I'll point out a couple of those, and then I want to talk about those tongue protrusions and his lips pursing. So an increase in stress and anxiety, we tend to get a little fidgety. We see her looking down. These are eye blocking techniques. I say eye blocking. I was grabbing my cell phone here. Eye blocking is like the screensaver on your iPhone. People will look down when they're blocking and they don't want you to look them in the eye. So we see this right here with her. She's rubbing her eyes. When we touch our eyes, Vinny, and you at home, I want you to think of a newborn babies or little ones, right? 6 months old. They cry, they're having a temper tantrum. What happens just before they fall asleep? They rub their eyes. Behind our eye, we have a nerve. And when we touch our eye, even in a meeting like this, you are tickling the back of your brain. So this nerve comes, you touch it, it tickles your brain. They've even shown it, Vinny, and you at home with fMRIs. You see dopamine dump in the body. Dopamine is the hormone that relaxes us. So babies cry, rub their eyes, boom, they're asleep. As adults, we subconsciously have been trained, right? So it's since our childhood that when stress is high, we'll rub our eyes. Now her lips are disappearing here, and then she does this little pursing of the lips. When we don't like what we see or hear, our lips disappear. And that lip roll is emotional control. So she's got an emotional control. Now, some of you, of course, are picking up on this head shaking. No. What this indicates is she's having a conversation in her head right here. And it doesn't mean it's what she's hearing. She could be saying, why did I do this? Why didn't I mean, it's like if you watch, a football game, I'm Boston girl, out of DC now, but Tom Brady, right? And it's like, Tom Brady's best football player ever. And I'm like, and I'm doing this. It doesn't mean I don't think Tom Brady's not the best. I'm like, dude, why did he retire? Why did he do it? Why did he step out on his marriage? Not step out. I'm not step out, but why did he not focus on his marriage? Why did he not put Giselle as, number one? So we don't know what the head shaking no to is happening, but we certainly know there's a conversation in her head that she's shaking her head. You can see her hands shaking. This is their stress and anxiety here. 100% the stress is through the roof right here. You see it with all this face touching, all the eye touching.
All right.
Now the lip pursing. One last thing, Vinny.
Okay.
This pursing of the lip is, I got busted. So always look for that, even in a meeting or on a date, or if you're confronting someone, and this pursing that you see happening where the lips come out, like we see the younger generation take selfies like that, the little, those little lips. But when it happens under high stress or we're confronting someone, it's an indicator I'm busted here.
Yeah, exactly. And why didn't Giselle support her man in his work? I'm sorry. All right, let's get to one more here. About a year after her husband's death, Kouri Richins released a children's book about grief and promoted it on ABC4's Good Things Utah. Let's take a look at some of what she said here.
My husband passed away unexpectedly last year, so it's March 4th was a 1-year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And, my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year.
Okay.
Well, where did she take the break? So we're always looking for a change in the baseline, right? What is someone's normal baseline? Where does she take the break here? Did you pick up on it, Vinny? So she's talking and she takes this big sigh and she has this change in her behavior. Right when she says, it caught us all off guard. It caught us all off guard. Now, maybe, I'll be devil's advocate here. Maybe it's like, well, yeah, if my husband died in the bed, I'd be caught off guard too. Yes. The cadence should still be the same as she's talking. Again, what's missing here is sadness, and we saw this with Scott Peterson was missing sadness. We saw this with, Jodi Arias was missing sadness. We saw this with Chris Watts, who slaughtered his pregnant wife and killed his 2 young daughters, Celeste and Bella. What you'll see is this other affect. And a friend of mine at the FBI behavioral unit, he's since retired from there, Frank Marsh, says, everything says something. So the fact that she's lacking emotions here, right? You're talking about getting caught off guard for your husband's is dead in the bed and you have these kids. Now, I think the language is interesting because she's saying we and my husband and I. So she's still talking like a team here. And she's still talking in current tense, which is also interesting for me, instead of talking in past tense with regard to her husband. So there are some suspicious behaviors here. I'm not going to be surprised if the jury finds her guilty.
Yeah, well, we shall see. And we'll see if she testifies at trial as well. That could be huge. Janine Driver, always great to get your insight into all this. We appreciate it. And we'll see you again really, really soon.